The October wind cut through Minneapolis as I pulled into my childhood home's driveway in Edina. My 2019 Honda Civic hummed quietly, its silver paint gleaming despite the overcast Minnesota sky. 28, I still felt that familiar knot. Before family gatherings, the red brick colonial looked unchanged white shutters, American flag on the porch, Mom's dormant flower beds. Dad's 3-year-old Buick Enclave dominated the driveway, its metallic finish gleaming with meticulous care. Tyler, my sister Emma, hugged me as I approached. At 25, she worked as an ER nurse at Regions Hospital. How was the drive? From Duluth? Not bad? I handed her the wine I'd brought. Where's everyone? Mom's cooking. Dad's in the garage. And yes, he's in one of his moods. My stomach tightened. Dad's moods had worsened since retiring from 3 meters 2 years ago. Without work structure, he critiqued everyone's life choices, especially mine. The house smelled like Mom's pot roast. I found her in the kitchen, flour on her sweater, gray hair perfect, despite hours of cooking. At 55, Linda Harrison maintained grace that had helped her manage our household while teaching high school English. There's my boy, she hugged me warmly. You look thin. Are you eating enough? I'm fine, Mom. Actually gained 5 pounds at the new job. I settled on a bar stool. How's the environmental consulting firm treating you? Really well? We're helping? Businesses reduce carbon footprints, working on renewable energy projects. I accepted her iced tea. It isn't amazing yet, but it's meaningful work. Mom nodded, though I caught her slight frown. She worried about my financial stability. Both parents had stable careers, my environmental firm choice instead of corporate. Management still concerned them. Tyler, get out here and help me. Dad's voice boomed from the garage. Robert Harrison remained imposing at 62'6", tall with broad shoulders, slightly softened by retirement. His gray hair framed sharp. Blue eyes that still assessed everything. I found him in his workshop. Tools hung precisely on pegboards, workbench spotless. The leaf blower lay disassembled on a tarp. Damn thing's making noise, he grumbled, examining the carburetor. Cheap Chinese parts, when did you buy it? I crouched to help. 3 years ago? Should last longer. Right. He looked up, eyes immediately. Shifting to my car through the garage door, his expression tightened with brewing disapproval. New car? His tone was neutral, but carried underlying judgment. Yeah, got it a few months ago. My Camry finally died. I kept my voice casual. Dad walked to the garage opening, studying my Civic with intensity once used for quarterly reports. I followed, watching him examine the modest sedan. Honda Civic, he said flatly. How much? 2019, certified pre-owned. Good value, reliable. I avoided the price question. He circled slowly, noting scratches and a small door dent. Gas mileage? About 35 combined. Great for commuting? Dad nodded, expression unreadable. In fading light, his granite face showed decades of Minnesota winters and corporate stress. I saw him categorizing my choice. Well, he said finally, I suppose. It'll get you from point. A 2-point B, the dismissal was subtle, but clear. In Dad's world, cars were statements about who you were. His Buick sat like a monument to middle-class success, leather seats, navigation, space for future grandchildren. That's the idea, I replied, forcing a smile. Reliable transportation? He turned back toward the garage. Come on, let's fix this before dinner. Working in silence, I glanced at my car. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I'd researched for months, comparing safety and reliability, staying within budget. The payments fit my income comfortably, leaving room for savings. More importantly, it represented conscious choice, practicality over prestige, environmental responsibility over status. The Civic would last over 200,000 miles and serve me well for years. Tyler, Dad, dinner. Mom called. The dining room was set with good china, candles flickering. She'd prepared pot roast, mashed potatoes, homemade rolls, and green bean casserole family. Tradition Emma was seated with water instead of wine. I'm on call tonight, emergency room duty. As we filled plates, Conversation flowed him as hospital stories, Mom's updates on colleagues, my environmental consulting work. For a while it felt like old times when family dinners were simple gatherings. But as evening progressed, I felt familiar undercurrents of expectation and disappointment. It was there in Dad's salary questions, pointed inquiries about advancement, subtle comparisons to cousins in higher-paying fields. The trouble started innocently enough. "So, Tyler," Dad said, cutting his second helping, "when are you planning to trade up from that Honda?" The question hung heavy in the air. I looked up, meeting Dad's expectant gaze as wind rattled the windows outside. "Trade up?" I repeated. "I just got the Civic. It's running great. I know, but..." He gestured dismissively, the same motion from arguments about my college major. "It's not exactly a career car. At your age, I drove a Buick. Something with presence." Emma shot me a sympathetic look. She'd faced similar pressure, choosing nursing over pre-med. Environmental consulting was foreign territory to Dad, government regulations, and hippie idealism. "Civic suits my needs perfectly," I said evenly. "It's reliable, efficient, and fits my budget. It's not about luxury." Dad's tone sharpened with his corporate edge. "It's about professional presentation. What do clients think when you pull up in an Econo box?" Mom cleared her throat, a sound that had diffused countless arguments. "It's Robert. Tyler's car is perfectly nice, practical." Dad said it like it tasted bad. I remember when men took pride in their vehicles. When what you drove said something about character and ambition, heat rose in my chest. "And what does my car say about my character?" "That you're settling," he said without hesitation, "content with good enough, instead of striving for better. At 28, you should be building toward something bigger." "What? A payment that eats half my income? At least I can't afford to impress people I don't like?" Set down my fork forcefully. "Sorry if my practical decisions disappoint you, Tyler." Mom's voice carried warning, but I was committed. "No, I want to understand Dad's logic. So my choice to buy a reliable, affordable car I can actually pay for shows lack of character?" Dad's jaw tightened, the same expression from college major arguments. "It shows lack of vision. When I was your age, I understood image matters. People judge you based on what you drive, how you present yourself. You can't ignore those realities." "Idealistic?" The word came out sharp. "Is it idealistic to live within my means? To choose meaningful work over chasing paychecks?" "Here we go," Emma muttered. "There's nothing wrong with financial success, Tyler. Nothing noble about struggle." Dad's voice rose, face flushing. "Worked 30 years to give you opportunities. And you're throwing it away for what? To save trees? To drive a car that screams?" "I've given up." The words hit like blows. "I haven't thrown anything away. I have meaningful work, financial stability, and happiness. I don't need a fancy car to validate my worth." "Happy." Dad spat the word. "You think happiness pays bills? Think your future girlfriend will be impressed by noble poverty and commitment? To being ordinary?" That was low. My last relationship had ended partly because Sarah grew tired of my reluctance to make expensive plans. "Robert, that's enough." Mom's voice cut through tension. "This is family dinner, not an interrogation." But Dad continued, years of frustration pouring out. "I'm tired of watching him waste potential, Linda. He's smart enough, capable enough, for anything, but he chooses mediocrity. The easy path that guarantees he'll never accomplish anything significant. And what would you have me do?" I stood abruptly. "Quit for some corporation that destroys the environment. Take massive loans for cars I don't need. Become another corporate drone measuring success by possessions." "I'd have you grow up," Dad shot back, rising. "Understand the world doesn't care about principles if you can't back them with achievement. That Honda, that's not transportation. It's a white flag. You're announcing you're done trying, content to be average." Deafening silence followed. Outside, a car passed, headlights briefly illuminating the room. Emma stared at her plate, pale. Mom's hands were folded tightly, knuckles white. Dad stood breathing heavily, face flushed with anger and disappointment. "You know what, Dad?" I said. Finally, voice calmer than I felt. "Maybe you're right. Maybe my card does say something about who I am. I walked around the table until standing directly before him. We were the same height now, but he still carried authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. Maybe it says I think carefully before major financial decisions. Someone who values substance over style. Someone who doesn't need external validation. I reached into my pocket, fingers closing around car keys. Dad's eyes flicked down, then back up, confusion replacing anger. Or maybe I continued, pulling out the keys slowly. It says something else entirely. The keys jingled softly, unnaturally loud in tense silence. Dad stared at them like something dangerous. "Tyler, what are you doing?" Mom whispered. I held the keys toward Dad, hand steady despite adrenaline. I have such strong opinions about my car, Dad. About what it says about my character. Dad stared suspiciously. "What's your point?" "Simple." I kept my voice conversational. "If my car is such an embarrassment, such a symbol of failure, then maybe you should take it." His confusion deepened. "Take it. Take it." I pressed the keys closer. "It's yours. Early Christmas gift." Dad stared like I'd offered a grenade. "Tyler, don't be ridiculous. I want your car. Why not?" I kept my hand extended. "You've made it clear it's beneath you, that anyone with ambition wouldn't drive something so ordinary. So take it." Mom sat frozen, fork suspended. Emma watched with fascination. "This is childish," Dad said, voice lacking earlier conviction. "Sit down." "No, I'm serious." I stepped closer. "You want to know what my car says about me? Let's find out what it says about you." Wind intensified outside, rattling windows. The sound filled silence between us. "It's okay, Mom. Dad and I are discussing values and priorities." I looked at my father, who seemed smaller now. "So what do you say, Dad? Want to experience life behind the wheel of a failure's car?" The word failure landed like a slap. Dad's face flushed with shame rather than anger. Understood what I was doing, forcing him to confront his cruelty. "You're being dramatic," he said weakly. "Am I? Let me tell you about this car, Dad." I pulled out a chair and sat, keys in my palm. When I decided to buy it, I spent 3 months researching everything. Dad remained standing, arms crossed defensively, but listening. Less than 3 months comparing safety ratings, reliability scores, fuel efficiency. I read consumer reports, studied crash tests, checked owner forums. I looked at the keys, remembering my satisfaction. I tested, drove multiple options at 3 dealerships. Emma listened intently. Mom's expression shifted from worry to curiosity. And you know what I discovered? This embarrassing Econobox has better safety ratings than your Buick. It's more reliable than luxury cars costing twice as much. It'll probably last twice as long as whatever flashy vehicle you think I should drive. Dad's defensive posture softened as he processed information challenging his assumptions. "But that's not the best part," I continued confidently. "The best part is what buying this car intelligently allowed me to do, because I'm not throwing away $400 monthly on unnecessary payments to impress strangers. I put $5,000 into my emergency fund this year." I stood slowly. I increased retirement contributions by 3%, hundreds of thousands in additional savings over 30 years. And last month, when Emma's hospital had that charity drive for children's cancer ward, I wrote a $1,000 check without thinking twice. Dad's eyes widened. Emma's mouth fell open. She hadn't known about the donation. "So you're right, Dad. My car does say something about who I am. It says I think beyond immediate gratification of impressing people whose opinions don't matter. It says I value financial security over status symbols. I'd rather contribute to meaningful causes than waste money on ego-serving assets." I stepped closer, keys extended again. "But apparently those aren't the right values. So please take the car, drive it around town, park it at the country club. Let your golf buddies see Robert Harrison getting out of his son's economy car." Silence stretched like taut wire. Candles had burned lower, wax pooling. "You're trying to make me feel guilty," Dad said quietly. "No, I'm trying to make you think about what success actually means. About whether someone's car is really the best measure of character." Dad looked around the dining room, family photos, good china, countless meal memories. His eyes lingered on my college graduation picture, his arm around my shoulders, pride. Evident when I was your age, he said slowly, things were different. Image mattered in ways that maybe don't make sense anymore. You projected success even if you weren't there yet. It was part of the game. I waited, sensing something shifting. I worked 30 years for the same company. Started in mailroom, worked up to regional manager. Every step, I was conscious of appearance, what I drove, where I lived. People were watching, judging promotion worthiness. Emma and Mom listened intently. But maybe I've been applying old rules to a new game. Maybe things that mattered in my career don't matter in yours. I felt tension loosening in my chest. The environmental field is different, I admitted. Clients respect that we practice what we preach. When I arrive in a fuel-efficient car, it reinforces our sustainability commitment. When I can honestly say our values extend to personal choices, it builds trust. Dad nodded slowly, processing information, challenging his assumptions. About professional success. And honestly, Dad, I am successful. Maybe not how you expected, but in ways that mattered to me. I love what I do. I'm good at it, making a difference. I have good relationships, comfortable life, and sleep well knowing my work contributes to something bigger. I looked at the keys one final time, then made a surprising decision. I walked over and gently placed them in Dad's palm, closing his fingers around them. Keep them for a week. Drive my embarrassing Econo box around town. How it feels behind the wheel of a car, representing different values. Then, if you still think it's a failure symbol, we can discuss what success really means. Dad stared at his closed fist, keys hidden, but weight unmistakable. Tyler, I can't take your car, he whispered. Sure you can. It's paid for, fully insured, remarkably reliable. Take it shopping, to appointments, visiting friends, just for a week. Consider it a prospective experiment. 3 days later, my phone rang while I worked from home in Duluth, reviewing wind farm environmental reports. October's sun streamed through windows, casting shadows across my cluttered desk. Tyler, Dad's voice sounded different, less certain, almost hesitant. Hey Dad, how's the Honda treating you? Long pause filled with traffic noise. I'm calling from your car. Hands-free, he added quickly. Can you really talk? I leaned back, surprised by his vulnerable tone. Of course. What's on your mind? This car, I've been driving it 3 days and I need to tell you something. Traffic noise faded. He'd pulled over. I pictured him in my Civic, working up courage for this conversation. I was wrong, he said simply. Not the car. What it represents. What it says about you. I was completely, stupidly wrong. I set down my coffee, hands unsteady. Dad, no. Let me finish. Yesterday, grocery shopping your car started immediately. Drove smoothly, parked icily. An older woman struggled with heavy bags. I helped her, and she thanked me. Said it was nice seeing a young man driving such a sensible car instead of gas-guzzling monsters. I smiled, imagining Dad's surprise at being complimented. Then today, at the VA hospital for my checkup, I parked next to this kid, maybe 25, missing his left leg below the knee. He was getting out of a beat-up 15-year-old Toyota Corolla. Watching him maneuver his prosthetic, I realized something that made me feel 3 inches tall. Dad's voice quieted, more thoughtful. That young man sacrificed his legs serving our country, driving a car that made your Honda look luxurious. But he had dignity, purpose, pride in his accomplishments. There I was, judging people based on vehicles like some shallow fool. I leaned forward, hanging on every word. But that's not the worst part. Yesterday I had lunch with Bill Morrison. Downtown? Remember Bill from 3M? He saw me getting out of your car and made snide comments about downsizing. Called it a cute little economy car condescendingly. I remembered Bill, another corporate retiree. And you know what I did? I defended it. Not just defended, I bragged about it. Told him about gas mileage, safety ratings, reliability. Talking, I realized I was proud to be driving it. My throat tightened. Dad, I'm not finished. This morning, helping Emma move furniture, you know how I get lost, refuse to ask directions? Well, your car has GPS built into the dashboard. Simple, effective navigation that got me exactly where I needed without fuss. This car has everything anyone actually needs without unnecessary bells and whistles justifying inflated prices. Paused, taking a deep breath. Tyler, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just for what I said about your car, but for assumptions about your choices, values, success definition. I've been viewing your life through my own experiences and insecurities. That wasn't fair. Tears pricked my eyes. Dad, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Because I realized you're not settling for less. You're choosing more. More freedom. Financial. Security alignment between values and actions. You're successful in ways I hadn't considered, and I was too stubborn to see it. October's sun had shifted, casting different shadows. Outside, Lake Superior stretched toward the horizon. There's something else. Emma told me about your $1,000 donation to the Children's Cancer Ward. Do you know how long since I made a charitable contribution that size? Since I did anything not focused on accumulating more stuff? I wiped my eyes, grateful he couldn't see me emotionally. She also told me about pro bono work with that community garden project. How you spend weekends helping low-income families learn sustainable gardening. That's not someone who's given up. It's someone who understands real. Success is measured by positive impact on others' lives. A car honked in the background. Dad, I appreciate this more than you know. But you don't have to completely reverse course because you drove my car a few days, don't I? His voice carried old authority, tempered with newfound humility. I spent 30 years climbing corporate ladders, accumulating possessions, measuring worth by salary and house size. And what do I have? Comfortable retirement? Sure. But also a son who felt he had to prove his worth by giving away his car. Weight of that observation settled between us. I've been thinking about your generation differently, about how you approach work, money, success. My generation was taught you worked hard, earned money, bought things. That's how you demonstrated value. But you're proving there are other ways to measure a life. Different doesn't mean better or worse, I said carefully. Your way worked for your time. It gave our family stability, but my path has to be my own. I know that now. And I'm proud of the path you've chosen, even if it took me too long to understand. He paused. There's one more thing. I've been talking to your mother about my behavior, the pressure I've put on you. She helped me see that my criticism wasn't really about your car or job, it was about my own fears. What fears? Fear that I hadn't prepared you well enough. Fear that my success definition was becoming obsolete and I didn't know how to adapt. Fear that if I admitted your way was valid, it would somehow invalidate my choices. His voice quieted. But those are my issues to work through, not yours. To bear, the silence was comfortable now, filled with understanding rather than tension. So what happens now? Now I give you back your keys and hope you'll forgive a stubborn old man who confused his anxieties with parental wisdom. Dad's voice carried a smile. And maybe next time I visit, you can tell me more about that wind farm project. I smiled, feeling years of weight lifting. I'd like that, Dad. Islay and Tyler. When I get home, I'm writing a check to that community garden project. If it's good enough for my son's time, it's good enough for his old man's support. As we said goodbye. I looked out at Lake Superior, its vast expanse reflecting afternoon sun. For the first time in years, the future felt full of possibility, not because circumstances had changed, but because the people who mattered finally understood my choices. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from proving you're right, from helping others understand why your path makes sense. And sometimes all it takes is handing someone the keys to your life and trusting them to see what you see.